It's week 18 in the NFL. We give you our 3 best bets for this Sunday, and it all starts right now. Hey guys, it's Matt from Grandstand Bettors.com, and we have our 3 best bets for week 18. But before we get to those, just make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss our NFL playoff predictions coming up, and of course, our Super Bowl prediction in about a month or so. And while you're at it, smash that like button. If you are as excited for the NFL playoffs to start next weekend as I am, I sure can't wait. I know you can't. So, without further ado, let's dive into the last day of the NFL regular season in Week 18 and start with a good one between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots in the 1 p.m. Eastern time slot. Bills at the moment favored by 7.5 points. The over-under, this one set at 43.5. So, all week long, we did hear good news coming out of the Cincinnati hospital where Hamlin is at, with signs that he is recovering without complications. That, of course, is the most important matter leading up to this game, but of course, there is a football game to be played this weekend, and the Bills versus Bengal games, as we know, is not going to be played at all, as that was declared a no contest. It will not be resumed in the final verdict, and the playoff situation is kind of a weird one. There could actually be a neutral AFC Championship game playoff game if it arises. Hopefully it doesn't, but regardless of the ifs and what could happen in the future with the Buffalo Bills, they can lock up the number 2 seed this week with a win against the Patriots. And they actually have a shot at the number 1 seed if the Raiders can beat the Chiefs. It was just a month ago that Josh Allen and these Bills beat the Patriots in Gillette Stadium 24-10. Josh Allen, who has thrown for over 4,000 yards on the season, with a third of them going to Stephon Diggs, looked good in that game. He threw for a 65% completion rate and 0 touchdowns. Interceptions is something that he has struggled with this year. Despite throwing 32 touchdowns, he does have 13 interceptions on the year, which is 4th worst in the league. The most concerning issue with that is that he leads the league in throwing interceptions in the red zone with 5. Now, New England doesn't have the best secondary in the NFL, but they are second best in the league with takeaways at almost 2 per game. So if the Bills do want to win this game, Josh Allen's going to have to protect the ball, especially in the red zone. But let's talk about the Patriots, the Bill Belichick-led team that has to win this week to sneak into the playoffs. Or if they don't win, they're going to need some help from the Jets and the Browns. And honestly, if you're relying on either of those teams, you should be worried. So Mac Jones and the 7.5 point underdogs, they should go into this game trying, right? Jones, honestly, last season, he looked like he could be the replacement for Tom Brady, and many people quickly around the league have turned on this young man. But I think we're all looking at the Patriots, who are putting up a mediocre 21 points per game, and blaming Jones, and I think that's the wrong thing to do. Jones has a 65.5 completion rate through his first 2 seasons, and if that stands for one more week, it would be the second highest in a QB's first 2 seasons, just behind Joe Burrow. So let's get off of Matt Jones for a moment and look at the other areas that the Patriots probably could improve on. Their rushing game has been non-existent this season, and I know there's been a lot of injuries, but the scheme of the Patriots continues to want to be to run a balanced attack, and this week, that's not going to cut it. Not only are they playing a top 5 defense, but they're also playing the 4th best rushing defense in the NFL. So, what is our best bet in this AFC East matchup? Well, here's the deal. If the Patriots want to make the playoffs this year, then they're going to have to let Matt Jones air the ball out. I know there are a couple wideouts that are questionable on the injury report, but with the magnitude of the game, they should be able to go. The Bills, essentially, they're coming off a bye week as they only played 10 minutes of that football game on Monday night. Josh Allen and this team, they don't want to lose the number 2 seed. They're going to come out fast and furious and possibly try to blow out the Patriots in the first 3 quarters so that maybe they can sit some starters. This game is actually going to be Josh Allen and Mac Jones slinging the ball back and forth in what looks like to be pitch-perfect weather in Buffalo with no wind. So, with our first best bet for week number 18 in the NFL, we're going to take the Bills and the Patriots over 43.5 points. Now, with our second matchup of week number 18, we're going to look at the LA Chargers versus the Denver Broncos in the 4:30 p.m. Eastern time slot. Broncos 3-point favorites at the moment, over-under set at 39.5. The Chargers, they come into this game having already clinched a playoff spot, and they've won 4 straight. Now, those 4 games were against the Colts, Rams, Titans, and Tua. So not really the cream of the crop, but you can only play who's on your schedule, and good teams take care of business. Herbert still hasn't proven to me that he is a top 5 quarterback in the league, as he hasn't won that big game yet, but no worries, Herbert lovers. That time is coming up soon. Herbert, though, statistically is having a great season. It's 4,600 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, and a 68% completion rate. He hasn't had to do much as a quarterback this season because Austin Eckler has been phenomenal in the backfield with 13 touchdowns, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. So what about this Broncos team heading into this matchup? Well, you'd have to say that the Russell trade really hasn't worked out for the Broncos in the short term, and it doesn't really seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. However, to the Broncos' credit, they almost pulled off an upset last week against the Chiefs. They lost 27-24 on the road. Of course, that INT by Russell Wilson really cost them the game. We're going to give credit, though, to the Broncos' defense last week. They held the Chiefs to 2 of 9 on third downs, but to be fair to the Chiefs, they really did shoot themselves in the foot in that game quite a bit. Wilson, or who I like to call the new Mr. Irrelevant, he has only 13 touchdowns with 10 INTs and less than 3,300 yards on the season. He is barely above a 60% completion rate, but I do want to give this guy a couple of excuses. And number one, they don't have a rushing attack on the Broncos. Their leading rusher, Latavius Murray, basically has 600 yards on the season with only 4 touchdowns, and this team has been decimated with injuries throughout the season. They don't even have one starter on offense that's played all 16 games, and only 2 have played in 15 games this season, with everybody else less than that. So who knows? Maybe from a betting perspective, we can get this team at a good number on their win total next season based off of what we have seen this season. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We have to figure out what our best bet is for this AFC West matchup in Week 18. Well, it's quite simple, because if the Bengals win their early game against the Ravens, then there's really no reason for the Chargers to even play their starters, as they will be locked into the 5th seed. And guess what? The Bengals, most likely, they are going to win that game. So we're not really going to overthink this. The Chargers are going to go out here. They're going to take out their starters before the game or very early in this game. And Russell Wilson, who's been playing with a chip on his shoulder for weeks now, honestly, 5 chips probably, I think he's going to have a good game to end the season. So with our second best bet of week number 18, we're going to take the Denver Broncos -3 over the LA Chargers. Now, before we get into our final play of week number 18, just a reminder, if you want all of our plays and player props for this upcoming week, head on over to GrandstandBettors.com, become part of our family, and start profiting each and every day. But we do have one more free play for you for Week 18, and it's in the San Francisco 49ers versus Arizona Cardinals matchup, again in the 4:30 p.m. Eastern time slot. 49ers, they're a 2-touchdown favorite. The over-under set at 39 points at the moment. 49ers coming in this week with everything to play for, as they could end up being the number 1 seed in the NFC with a win and an Eagles loss. And honestly, they could end up actually being the 3rd seed if they lose to the Cardinals and the Vikings were to win. But if that happens, the 3rd seed is the least of their worries, because they would have lost to the Cardinals, and that should set off fire alarms throughout the city of San Francisco. Most likely, though, they are going to get the number 2 seed, and then the biggest question mark for this team will be if Jimmy G is able to come back. Do they go with him, or do they stick with Brock Purdy? Regardless of all the scenarios in front of this team, though, one thing we do know about the 49ers is they are the hottest team in the NFL right now, and Brock Purdy has them on a 9-game winning streak after beating the Raiders in overtime last week. Purdy, since taking over, has thrown for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, and had a nice streak going last week up until the point he threw an interception. At that time, he had 9 TDs to 0 interceptions. That is a good streak for a young gentleman who was considered Mr. Irrelevant. He's been extremely accurate. 66% pass completion rate after he took over 6 weeks ago. But when you have Christian McCaffrey to take the pressure off of you, who knows, maybe even Zach Wilson could run this offense. The bad news is this week, I think they're going to be without McCaffrey. I don't think he's going to suit up this week, and they have a slew of other injury reports that you should keep your eye on. With Samuel, can he come back? Mitchell, and even Purdy is dealing with some rib problems. The good news for the team, though, is they are playing the Arizona Cardinals, who are 4-12, and as each week goes on, their losses just keep getting worse. They've lost 6 straight, and that includes a loss to the Broncos. Last week, they lost on a last-second field goal to the Falcons. And over the last 3 weeks, they've looked at Colt McCoy, Trace McSorley, and David Blau to see if they can be any good or consistent at quarterback. Despite the recent carousel at quarterback and their overall record, this team actually is not that bad when you look at them statistically. Now, they are in the bottom third in overall offense, passing, and overall defense, but they do boost a top 15 rush defense. So, where has everything gone wrong for this team? Well, that can be summed up in one word: injuries. Injuries and maybe a second word of a suspension. Hopkins being suspended for the first 6 weeks of this season hurt them right off the bat. And if you look at this team, not one of the 36 players that are on the offensive side of the ball in a quarterback, wide receiver, running back, or tight end position have played in all 16 games. Only 3 have played in 15 games. Now, to the eye, Murray didn't look like he had a great season, but statistically it wasn't half bad. 67% completion rate, 2,400 yards, 11 weeks through the season before that injury. The scheme is really what holds this team back. Kingsbury needs to be out as head coach. There needs to be changes in the front office, and all that's going to happen here after this game. But let's talk about the game and what is our best bet for this matchup between what could be the number 1 seed in the NFC and a team that's probably going to be golfing on Monday morning. Well, let's talk about the 49ers. They do play at the same time that the Eagles play, which means at least the first half, they're going to be putting their starters in and will probably try to put the Cardinals out of their misery early and quickly, because in the second half, if the Eagles have a stronghold over the Giants, then the 49ers, they're probably, if they're winning, they're going to want to take their starters out, get them rested for the playoffs. Honestly, at first, we did lean 49ers here with the points, but 2 touchdowns is a lot, especially with the chance that the Niners could pull all of their starters and most of their playmakers early in the second half. This game has 31-17 written all over it, so with our best bet of the regular season in the NFL, we're going to take the 49ers and the Cardinals over 39.5 points. Well, that does it for us here at Grandstand Bettors. As always, sit back, relax, enjoy the last day of the NFL season, get ready for the playoffs, and we'll see you live right here on Sunday for Browns Steelers Week 18.